The moment the flight attendant told me I didn't belong in my seat, I knew this wasn't just going to be another awkward travel story I'd laugh about later. It was the way she said it, calm but sharp, like she was doing me a favor by correcting a mistake I was too clueless to notice. "Sir, I think you're confused. This section is reserved." The cabin went quiet. That heavy silence you feel before something ugly happens, and I remember thinking, wow, here we go again. Let me rewind a little because this didn't start on the plane. It started hours earlier at the airport when I walked in wearing a hoodie, sneakers, and headphones, looking like someone who just wanted to get home. I'd had a long week meetings back to back, a deal that almost fell apart, the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just wanted to fly. But I've learned that for some people, the way you look decides everything they think they know about you. At the check-in counter, I stepped into the priority line. Empty. Red carpet. Easy. Or so I thought. A guy in a vest stepped in front of me, didn't even look at my face, just my clothes. "Economy's over there," he said, pointing like I was blocking traffic. I told him calmly, "I'm in business class." He laughed, actually laughed like I'd told him a joke. "Nice try," he said. "Upgrades don't work like that." When he finally scanned my pass and it beeped green, he didn't apologize. He just shrugged and waved me through like I was a glitch, not a customer. That was the first sting. I swallowed it. I always do. By the time I boarded, I'd already told myself to keep my head down. Don't make a scene. Just get to your seat. That's when I met her. The head flight attendant. Perfect uniform, perfect posture. Smile practiced to the point it looked painful. She greeted the guy in front of me like an old friend took his coat, offered champagne. Then she looked at me and the smile vanished like someone hit delete. "Boarding pass," she said. No hello, no welcome aboard. She stared at my phone for a long second. "This is business class," she said. "Yes," I replied. "That's why I'm here." She tilted her head. "Are you sure? Sometimes the app glitches. Economy is further back." I felt that familiar heat in my chest, the one that comes when you realize this has nothing to do with seating and everything to do with assumptions. I told her again that I paid for the seat. Full fare. She sighed, checked her tablet, then asked for my ID and credit card. I watched her let the man next to me walk right past without a second glance. I handed over my ID. She scrutinized it like she was hoping to find something wrong, then finally handed it back. "Fine," she said. "Try not to disturb anyone." That word disturb stuck with me as I walked to my seat, like my presence alone was a problem. I sat down, buckled in, and told myself to breathe. You know that moment when you're trying to convince yourself it's not personal, that you're being too sensitive? Yeah, that one. Pre-flight drinks started, and when the cart reached my row, the junior attendant reached for a glass. The head attendant snapped from the galley sharp and loud. Not for him. She pulled the younger one aside, whispering, but not quietly enough. "Just give him water. We'll save the good stuff." I ended up with a plastic cup while everyone else had crystal. It sounds small. It never is. That's when something shifted in me. Not anger, not yet, but clarity. I realized I was being tested not officially, but in that unspoken way people test you when they think you won't push back. So I stopped shrinking. I started paying attention. After takeoff, meal orders began. They skipped me entirely. When I pressed the call button, she leaned in and said, "I assumed you wouldn't be eating." I asked why. She smiled thinly and said catering was limited, upgrades don't always count, and maybe I could have some crackers later. Crackers, on a 7-hour flight. I looked her in the eye and said, "I booked this seat days ago." She shrugged. "That's not what I see." And then she added almost as an afterthought, "You might want to take off the hoodie. It makes people uncomfortable." That's when I knew exactly how far this was going to go. A little context here. I'm not just some guy who lucked into a nice seat. I've spent my life being underestimated. I built my company from nothing, watched people talk over me in meetings, watched deals almost slip away because someone assumed I was the assistant. I learned early that power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just sits quietly and waits. That's what I did. About 20 minutes into the flight, the guy across the aisle stood up in a panic. His watch was missing. Expensive, flashy, the kind of thing you don't misplace lightly. The cabin froze. I felt eyes shift. And then he pointed at me. It was him, he said. He's the only one who doesn't belong here. The head attendant didn't hesitate. She turned to me like a switch flipped. Authority mode. Sir, stand up. I told her no. She accused me of theft, threatened restraints, told me to empty my pockets. People were watching now. Phones half hidden. Judgment thick in the air. She grabbed my bag from the overhead bin and dumped it onto my lap. Laptop, charger, notebook, no watch. I looked up at her and said quietly, "You're making a mistake." She laughed. "People like you always say that." So I stopped waiting. I took out my phone and made a call. Not to complain, not to argue, to escalate. The cockpit phone rang moments later. Emergency tone. She answered it confident at first, then confused, then pale. She hung up without saying a word. A minute later, the captain announced we were turning back due to a personnel issue. Murmurs spread through the cabin. The man who accused me demanded answers. She didn't look at him. She was staring at me like she'd finally realized she'd stepped into something much bigger than her. I stood up slowly, calm, clear. "I own this company," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "And what you just did violates every policy you're supposed to enforce." I pointed to the gap beside the man's seat. "Your watch fell down there." He checked. "Found it." Silence crashed over the cabin. We landed to security and corporate waiting on the tarmac. She was terminated on the spot. Badge wings, everything. The gate agent who blocked me earlier was fired too. No speeches, just consequences. The man who accused me lost his status, his seat, and later his job. Turns out, public accusations based on bias don't play well when there's video. Here's the part that always sparks debate. Some people say I went too far. That I could have let it go taught them a lesson quietly. Maybe. But here's what I know. If I'd been someone without power, without resources, that flight would have ended very differently for me. I would have been humiliated, restrained, maybe worse, and no one would have apologized. The system only corrected itself because it had to. A few months later, I flew again. Same airline, same seat. This time, the service was flawless. Not because I changed how I looked, but because the culture changed. And that matters. So, I'll ask you this. Was I right to push back the way I did? Or should I have stayed quiet? Kept the peace? Let it slide like we're so often told to do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand because these moments aren't rare. They're just rarely talked about. And if you've ever been judged dismissed or underestimated, share your story too. Sometimes the only way things change is when we stop pretending nothing happened.